Okay. Good evening, councillors. Thank you for coming to this meeting of the Finance and General Purposes Committee on the 17th of July 2023. The agenda is as follows. Item 1 is apologies for absence received.
No apologies received, Chair.
I believe Councillor Gray is away.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
2 declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted on the agenda. Any disclosures? No. Item 3 is minutes of the Finance and General Purposes Committee. Receive the minutes of the Finance and General Purposes Committee held on the 19th of June 2023 and to consider any matters arising from those minutes not covered elsewhere in this agenda. Do we have any matters arising?
Couple of points. FG 06196. Business continuity plan. Was there any checks made, Town Clerk, in terms of having one?
Sorry, nothing progress to date, but it is obviously on my list.
Yeah, so I was going to offer that I can draft one, if that's acceptable, and get it ready for the September meeting.
Any,
We'll have to do that. And if you do find something, you can feed into it.
Okay.
any
And just one other.
comments on that?
Yep.
Oh, not on that particular
No.
one, sorry, no, a
Okay.
different one.
I mean, I think this is, we talked in the previous meeting about having a rolling action plan of decisions, so this is the kind of thing where we need to make sure it doesn't get lost in the future. But are members happy for Councillor Zucker to draft a?
Yeah, I would propose that he does. I've got my full faith in him to undertake a professional job.
Anyone objecting?
Well,
Shall we, are you happy to vote on that? All those in favour?
thank you.
Yeah, I had another item here, was the FG 06198,
Yeah.
which was the
Holders Gardens.
the play areas. The one thing that it does worry me about is Dover District Council, if our contracts have lapsed, Dover District Council used to take out regular safety checks on the playground equipment. And I'm just wondering when the last safety check was undertaken and why they didn't notify us that the contracts had lapsed, because obviously the public safety is paramount to this council and we need to make sure one is done as soon as possible.
I think the Town Clerk has an update on this.
Yes, thank you. So obviously there were questions from that meeting which were fed back to the Dover District Council officer. The report refers to the DDC officer having shared emission designs costings for the play area. Has any further contact with STC been undertaken in addition to the report presented to the Finance and General Purposes Committee? He confirmed no further contact as of yet has been made with STC or the Finance and General Purposes Committee. Then there was a query about the partial refurbishment and an explanation what this means as opposed to a full refurbishment. So he's told me that partial refurbishment refers to specific equipment. This is removed and replaced with new, with the remaining equipment retained, in comparison to a full refurbishment where the whole facility is replaced. He has included the specifics of the equipment, which he hopes will provide some further clarity. And that's where there is a table that's been shared, and this is pieces of equipment. The wooden multi-play unit, it's proposed to have that removed. He said that the piece of equipment, although it's lasted way beyond its expected life, it has been repaired and adapted several times, and now obviously doesn't have as much play value as it used to, but it is still safe to use. The arc bridge is another item proposed to be removed. It does remain serviceable and safe to use, and the play value is not what it used to be. And again, he said that the surfacing would then be removed and replaced, although concrete base, to be reused, that's right. He talks about the swings, toddler and flat. He said they are serviceable and safe to use. The Sputnik roundabout, That equipment is serviceable and safe to use, and the full waste spring net and playboard retained again, and this equipment was provided by the Pfizer Group in 2016 and remains serviceable and safe to use. And the slide multiplay unit to be retained, and that equipment remains serviceable and safe to use. But it does point out that if there is an opportunity for additional funding, then ultimately a full refurbishment could be undertaken, but that would be significant to much more investment from all parties, and he estimates somewhere in the region of £70,000 minimum. There is further information, because I think there was a query about consultation, whether that's been undertaken with local residents. No consultation has been taken at this stage for the indicated proposals. However, should a project arise, consultation will be included with the local community, schools, groups, etc., to research what specific equipment or play styles the community would like to see. The consultation will help the invited contractors through a tendering process to determine the formal design proposals. A second consultation phase can then be implemented for the community to choose their preferred design based on the best second or third scored in the tendering process, although this would be subject to any specific deadline that may need to be considered. I think there was also a query about the amount of funding from Southern Water. He said there was initial confusion as £30,000 compensation was provided from Southern Water for parking suspension, which from his understanding cannot be used. That was ring-fenced. An additional £15,000 compensation towards investment for the Bulwarks Play area was provided. This has been validated by the finance team at Dover District Council. He's not sure where the initial engagement for this came from, and he can only apologise for the confusion that it's caused. Then obviously he talks about the service level agreement, because as we've been told, it's lapsed. He said it did lapse in March 2020. He has given me the original agreement that was set up, and he said from the operational perspective there will be no changes, although fees will be subject to change. It should be noted that fees on the original agreement were set up on the basis of external companies undertaking the majority of maintenance. However, the park teams at Dover District Council are in-house, and they should provide a significant saving on the costs that were back in 2020. The report refers to undertaking a tendering exercise. The inclusion of a quote from Compound Limited should be clarified. He said the use of Compound at this stage is to provide an indicative design of what can be achieved to a specific budget, in this case 40,000 to 45,000, based on generic pieces of equipment they supply and install. And in return, for their initial work, they are ensured that they are guaranteed a spot during the tendering process, although of course they are not guaranteed the contract. And the specifications will be subject to a design brief alongside the community consultation as detailed. Thank you.
Just following up on that, it's quite a comprehensive set of answers, which is great, but just slightly disappointing that there was a site meeting on the 29th of June, so it was advertised quite extensively on Facebook by some individuals, and it would have been nice if the Town Council had been invited to that, I think. But notwithstanding that, as a supplementary, I have got a response to an FOI very much on this territory around maintenance programmes, etc. So I'd like to supplement what you've covered here and share it to the group. So they don't actually have a maintenance programme in place, but what they do have is an inspection regime. So they are quite active in terms of inspecting the free play parks, because obviously the bus is also another play park they're responsible for. So I'm happy to share that with the group.
Okay, good. So what they're saying is if some of these items are usable, but they're not saying how long they might be viable for, but whether there's a full or partial refurbishment, they will consult with us fully about new equipment, etc.
I've just got one query, and I'm sure it's a simple answer. Who is responsible for liability insurance? Is it DDC?
Yes.
Okay. And we're quite certain they've got it. Are we?
So within the FOI, the District Council's insurance company carries out an annual check of all DDC play parks. So it is a a rolling process in terms of insurance and their responsibilities as well.
Sorry, Jill, could you just repeat the bits about the 35,000 from Southern Water? Is that available for this work or is it not available?
Where there was confusion as £30,000 compensation, that was provided from Southern Water for parking suspension, which from this officer's understanding cannot be used. There was an additional £15,000 compensation that was towards investment for this play area. So this has been validated by the Dover District Council Finance team. So obviously they've looked at where this money is sat and the code that it's assigned to. So he's not sure where the initial engagement for this came from. He can only apologise for the confusion. So I think where people heard £30,000, it was ring fenced for parking suspension, and it's not something that could be used in this idea about the play area being the £15,000 can be.
So 15 is available and it could be 70,000 total, which we would have to find from DDC or STC sources.
I'm sorry, where do you get the 70,000? But my question is, when they say £30,000 cannot be used, they should say cannot be used for a particular purpose. So what can it not be used for? I mean, parking compensation, it's residents who suffer deprivation of parking. Have they, each of them had a little handout? What is this £30,000 for?
I'll go back to the Dover District Council officer and ask what this parking suspension actually means and what, in real practical terms, it could be used for. I'll take that as an action.
And where did you get your 70,000?
It's an estimate for the full. So, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say to Claire, I think the parking suspension was where Southern Water were undertaking works on the roads. So obviously the parking bays that for people that have residence parking permits in were unable to park near their own properties. So that's what's happened. So, but you've quite rightly raised that if there's £30,000 against the parking suspension, in other words, the cause of inability to park locally, then that needs to be clarified. Why that money can't be used for projects within Sandwich Town.
It's my understanding that the parking that was suspended was down by the quayside.
That's correct.
Because they had a load of tankers
They did.
taking material away from beside the tennis club. So it wasn't on the roads, it was in that car park.
In the,
Yeah.
Yes, but I use that car park.
Yeah, absolutely.
For parking. Nobody's given me a little package of money.
For those
so
that
I want to know what it's for. What's that? And it cannot be used. What's that mean?
well, could we ask the town clerk to reply to this to say, we note the comments, we're disappointed with the 30,000 not being available, asked to clarify where that money's going, and perhaps query what the life of these usable items might be, because it seems to me pointless just doing a partial refurb when 10 years down the line they might need
And why the people that were inconvenienced aren't benefiting from the compensation that was made by Southern Water.
And a number of these items, if I must say, I was following up on this more than 10 years ago, and items such as the wooden climbing frame and the ark, I mean, I'm talking 10 years ago, they said they were due for replacement then, and they've been literally repairing and refurbishing all this time. So as Councillor Wiles has said, we do need clarity on whether to go for a full refurb or a partial refurb, but then we're throwing back good money against bad afterwards. I'd like to propose acceptance of these previous minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, on a final thing on that, could we also ask that they, whatever decision is made, that there is proper consultation both with this town council and with everybody about new equipment? We don't want equipment foisted on us without having had a chance to look at it. So we have a proposal to accept the minutes. Do we have a seconder?
Yes, second.
Second. Okay. All those in favour? you happy for me to sign the minutes? Right, thank you for that. Next item is for public participation. 15-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of the business on the agenda. Representation should not exceed 3 minutes. Do we have any?
No request.
No requests. Okay. Number 5 is report of the Information Technology and Digital Communications Working Group. The committee is asked to consider this report and consider the recommendations to progress the tender exercise for the procurement of a new website for the Town Council. Attachment 2, decision required. Councillor Zoop, are you going to?
Yeah, I just breeze through what's in the report itself. So the working group has met twice since the last meeting of this committee. The user requirements for both the website and the IT support managed service have been documented. The tender document that you've got in front of you for the website has been completed and is submitted for today's consideration. Just in the background, several inquiries have been made to identify suitable website providers. 4 companies, all with substantial experience in delivering websites to town councils, have been identified.
Excuse me, Councillor, could I just say, from a commercial point of view, I don't think it's right that the names of contractors or people on bidding lists are published in the public domain. So I would ask you not to mention any names of any companies. Thank you.
The committee has asked today that a tender exercise should be run to procure a new website for the council. The proposal is for the exercise to be managed by the town clerk, and I'll provide support to her in doing that. Invites will be sent out to 5 companies. That's 4 new ones plus the existing one. If approved today, I will produce an evaluation criteria document to support the evaluation process. And just as an aside, we are, between myself and the town clerk, we have a number of tactical changes, small in number and small in impact, but the website is getting slightly refreshed in terms of some of the details. Some of the minutes, for example, are 2-3 years old, so they're being removed. So that is currently with Hibbits as a list to do. They've accepted it, they've issued a ticket against it, and they've suggested they'll get it updated within the next week. So just very quickly moving on to the identifying of a suitable IT managed service provider. Similar to the website approach, we have agreed to set of user requirements within the working group, but work on developing a tender document was paused to enable us to bring the website tender document to this meeting today. If that is approved, then I will start work on the tender document for the managed service. We did agree within the working group that both documents will be ready by the 14th of October. And so therefore we are ahead in terms of the website document, but for the tender for the IT managed support, that should be ready in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So I just had a question of the committee here, because I'm not sure if the next meeting in August is going to take place, because if it isn't with the committee, I just want to seek views on how you want that tender document handled, because it will be ready before September. If we wait until September, that just builds in a few weeks' time.
I think the August meeting will not take place at this meeting, but presumably it will go direct to the council.
Can I ask why?
Staffing pressures. I mean, we really, you know, for a while we've got severe staffing pressures at the moment.
So is annual leave being taken?
All right. I'm just surprised, you know, when we are a 9-strong committee that you know, we can't make up 5 people to hold a meeting. And just surprise them, you know.
Thank you. I do think it's important to try to maintain as much momentum as we can for the website. It would be a shame if we couldn't hit the ground running in the autumn.
So the website itself, that tender process subject to people's availability, and then it needs to go to the town council at the next stage, and that's part of recommendation today. There's no delay in that, Martin, in terms of what I'm trying to do.
What sort of, once the tender document is agreed and is out there for the website, what sort of deadline are you going to give for tenders?
Usually 2 or 3 weeks. You can do it as short as that. It doesn't have to be anything too lengthy, because these providers, are very much up to speed with this sort of request, and it doesn't normally take more than 2 to 3 weeks.
So if the tender document were agreed by us today, it could go to the council at the end of this month, and then it could be put out and a deadline end of August for the website?
I think this, because we are not committing to any spend ourselves, so I think we can start the evaluation exercise ourselves, to then have the returns to come back to the town council to evaluate. Would that not be sensible?
So the evaluation exercises of the tenders.
Yes.
Okay, but I'm just asking about the timetable before that, for the submission of tenders. What deadline are we going to set for that? Just to keep this thing going.
2 to 3 weeks.
Yes, but could we say the deadline is the end of August?
That was the meeting earlier.
That's fine.
And then we could evaluate, and then the working group could evaluate
Yes.
the submissions
Yeah.
and make a report to the September
September
meeting
meeting.
Of the town council.
of the town council.
Yes.
So just to clarify, does this committee have authority to agree this tender? Or does it have to go to the full council?
This, as a tendering exercise, you do have the authority to agree this, because you are the Finance and General Purposes Committee, because you're not committing to any expenditure. It's purely, this is a tender exercise that you agree.
So this tender could go out within the next couple of weeks,
Certainly.
and then
Certainly.
with a deadline for the end of August.
Yep.
And the council itself could make that decision
Yes.
at the end of August.
Yes.
So this committee doesn't then have to meet, or it could meet just to discuss this issue, but it won't be able to
So the
consider it.
evaluation exercise should be done at town council level, so
Yeah.
there is no additional value in that
That's
process.
right.
The one thing I would say is that most of the companies I've spoken to suggest it is feasible to build a new website within 6 to 8 weeks, but one caveat is actually having available staff to be able to provide the information they need, and that is a risk to timescales. It's not about burdening the existing staff with more work, I'm just saying it is a risk that might elongate the process.
Can I just say, also the other factor in all of this, all these sort of business processes going forward, the town clerk is now in place, so the recruitment of staff is also, I'm sorry to keep saying this, is of the utmost priority as well. So until we get the staff in, we can't actually undertake a lot of these actions, and that's
reality. Yeah. So just two further things. Councillor Mallet will give an update around the live streaming. So he's been looking at that, so if you would like to do that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'll stand up for this. Live streaming. How long is a piece of string? I've been looking at cameras. Basically, you can go from 50 quid up to 1,500 for recommended. You can go, the to my mind, the optimum is looking at the quality of the noise, how that's picked up, because you can pick up what generally who people are, but to actually be able to hear things, and Christina has to sort of say on her website that you have to turn your volume up. So for noise, you need a decent microphone. The other area is the convenience of setting up, because you don't want to have somebody coming in and setting up the laptop, the camera, the microphone, the what have you, because that will have to be somebody's task. Then they take it away and potentially download. It should be live streaming, something that you can take in, most likely on a tripod, switch it on, perhaps a little bit of twiddling, and that's it. So that's where I got to in terms of, you know, the looking at the challenges rather than this is the particular Sony XYZ that we need and what have you. I've actually been trying live streaming on my laptop, so watching myself speak and recording it at the same time, and that all works. It's all very straightforward, but it's got to work in the context of what we're doing. So I hope to be able to bring something to the SIT group and say, this is generically what we want. Here's an example. We could just go and buy it. But then again, will the Wi-Fi and the connectivity of our broadband, of our 4G, cope with that? Which, you know, I think we had a small demonstration from Christina at our last meeting. Yes, it looks like it will, as long as it will cope with the picking up people's voices as well. So that's where I am at the moment. I hope that's satisfactory.
Thank you. Will the cameras be fixed within this network?
Well, the idea, you say cameras, it would be a camera. Otherwise, you've got the position of which one are you looking at? Because having, as with a Zoom meeting, multiple images, it just, and the same with microphones. Most, when you start talking about webcams and vlogging, we're talking about lapel microphones, but we need something which sits in the corner effectively and picks up as many people as possible. Yes?
Yes, because one of the features of these meetings is that we need to move around in order to use this building efficiently, and because there'll be other users and so on. So I would personally think that a mobile system would be rather more efficient than a fixed one.
This is where I'm looking at a tripod with a camera on, because you can get them which stream. And as I was saying, we have to make sure that microphone is decent, or have a separate microphone. But as long as you can pick it up and walk around with it easily, because I wouldn't want to subject anybody, most likely the town clerk, with something that is just an onerous task to start with and to finish with.
We do have a loop system in it. Would your sound system be able to connect into the loop system?
Or you're going then into another area of complexity.
You have about half a dozen microphones in the loop system, but you can't loop it into it.
I would imagine technically you could, but looking at something, I mean, for example, I've been going online looking for examples of parish councils. They are all what we have with regard to, Christina. They all seem to be individuals coming in and recording using a phone. Yeah, loop system. You then get into what Dover District Council has, which I would imagine is beyond our budget. And then they've got a set system where you have to go into one conference room and it's a conferencing system. I don't know what they would have paid for that. I would imagine tens of thousands of pounds. And I wouldn't want to even consider that.
Councillor Green.
Just as a brainstorming, just listening to the comments here, we've all got microphones and cameras in front of us at the moment. So is there a system? Is it worth trying to find out if there is some kind of app or something that would integrate the iPads that are around the table and effectively give the mobility, the individual voice pickup, but I recognise it would probably need a central controller.
Well, from what you said, we're then looking at a Zoom system. So you could have that. We all arrive, log into Zoom, and that basically solves it. As long as the infrastructure of the Guildhall, that's the Wi-Fi system, will cope with it, because then you've got potentially 16, 17 people having a Zoom going through one Wi-Fi where we normally only have one, and it's as soon as you start using video, you're hogging the bandwidth. We're using a lot of data, so I would say practically, yes, that's the solution. That would work perfectly, but you would need, whereas I would imagine our system here will be like something like 2 megabits upload, you'd need like 20 megabits upload at least.
The thing is that if you were to go down the iPad route, it's preempting the decision about the IT systems. You know, we don't I certainly don't like the iPads, and I don't want them in future, but that's another decision. Could I ask, is the idea that it would be live streamed to both Facebook page and the website?
It would be live streamed to a location, so that potentially you would access it through Facebook or what have you, but mostly on our website, and it would be stored on YouTube, so you can go to it later.
So you can go back and look at who said what when, which is important. Sometimes.
So you can see me going test, test, test on my screen. Okay,
Simon.
I'll just add, if anybody needs to know, that the History Society has been doing this since COVID. So we started doing it in COVID, and we started using Zoom, but obviously with just the one camera, so it's not using up a lot of bandwidth. But we're still doing that now, so we're still recording and live streaming the sessions for anybody that belongs to the History Society, and it works very well with one camera, one lapel microphone, and it works perfectly okay with that setup. So, and we've got an IT specialist, AV specialist, who lives at Staple, who would be quite happy to come in and help us as well.
We can cut through everything and possibly copy what's happening in history, at least to get things going.
Yeah,
Indeed. Yeah. Because without boasting, the first lecture of the new History Society in September, we've got to up our game with our AV, because we have Jan Leeming as our first lecture of the year, and she said that she's put special criteria on our use of recording. So.
I'll send you an email asking.
So could we go back to the website specification? Is there any user requirements? Are there any other points on that?
I've got
Questions?
some questions, because I'm not clear who a user is.
That was my query.
And are all the users located within the Guildhall? And I'll come back to that. Or can users be outsiders who? So I've got some questions. So first of all, who can routinely update a website with this tender?
So it should be any officer. So
Any officer.
basically there will be a designated officer, but it will be something that anyone potentially that works at the town council will be able to do. It should be that easy to access and update. You know, that there will be multiple people that have that opportunity and access.
Okay. So second question is, we have a number of organisations within Sandwich, as we know, who run events. We have a great deal of tourism information which we want to be easily accessed by anybody who goes on to the Sandwich Town Council website. So who would be responsible for updating all that information? Or would it be possible within this tender document, and I really wasn't sure, for outside organisations to be, in a sense, users, in that they can update the information from remotely, not from within here.
Yes, so that is included within the tender document as an opportunity. Obviously, we need to see that the bidders have the capability to build that into the website delivery, but what we're looking for is the opportunity through very controlled access, the ability, for example, the calendar that might be on there that includes events that aren't council events, so local events that are occurring, that if somebody's got a controlled access, they're able to put that information into the calendar. Similarly, other aspects of the site will also give that controlled access as well to be built.
But the calendar, when a calendar is what it says it is, it doesn't actually allow for a little poster that describes the event, for example. Or if it's tourism information, it has a little picture of whatever it is these people are talking about, Richmond Fort, for example.
Yes.
And how would we vet? So that's one problem where I would hope that it would be possible for that kind of illustrated information to be available. And the other, yes, which leads me to the second related question, which if that sort of information could be posted, placed on the website, remotely by other outside users, how would we vet those outside users? I mean, how would we make absolutely certain that, they're well, to use the word kosher?
Yes.
And other organisations that I've thought about are organisations like Visit Kent, Whitecliffe's Country, and so on. They are obviously kosher, but there may be others that aren't in some way. We live in a world full of fakery. So how is that taken about?
So my understanding would be, and my approach would be, that anyone that wants to request for information would have to come through me or an officer to be signed off before, because obviously you could have a situation where someone posts something completely inappropriate and would be reputational damage for the town.
Yes, absolutely.
And even a reputable organisation can themselves have insiders who might post stuff that's unacceptable. So the channel has to be through the town clerk and their team in terms of material that we want to have displayed on the site.
Yeah, also I was going to say, you can use something called hot links. So basically what it is we advertise an organisation like the Sandwich History Society, and then on our website there's what's called a hot link. So when somebody wants to see what Sandwich History Society has got coming up in September, they just click on the hot link and it takes them from our website to the Sandwich Local History website, and that is the safest way of doing it, instead of anybody uploading inappropriate material to our website.
Okay. Any more comments? We're just looking at the user requirements for the website at the moment.
Okay.
That's okay. Well, will that go out with the tender document?
No, I wasn't intending on that because those requirements have been built into the tender document. I've done a read across and everything is reflected within it. Now that we've got a full set in front of us.
Could you just explain the acronyms? WCAG2, W3C.
I would have to look that up. They're accessibility related,
Okay.
technical requirements.
Right. I believe you.
And I did look them up when I did look them up when I was doing it, but I haven't memorised them.
Wireless communications.
Probably have to upgrade to 5G. Or 4G or something.
So, any other comments on this documentation? You're all happy with it?
There are a couple of little words that I would like to have rearranged. I can speak to you, minor little things that
No problem with
I
that.
think are important.
Yes, I did notice that Operation Royal Bridge
Oh yes.
Ready is mentioned, and that somewhere else it's Operation Menai Bridge.
Right, it
Presumably
is
they're
operating.
two different deaths.
Well, we've had one death,
Yes.
but it should be operational. Operation Menai Bridge. So if there is Royal Bridge in there, I will need to change
Yes,
that.
there is.
The
I'm
after
looking at
event.
it right now.
Oh, well, I was actually going to make a recommendation that we should accept the recommendations put forward by the ITM working group. And to take this forward as quickly as possible.
So for the website, if we agree this now, which we have authority to do, the documentation can go out within the next couple of weeks
Certainly.
with a return date for mid-August and to report to council by the end of August.
Yes, so I am on leave next week, so I was going to ask if, when I'm back from leave, this could be my priority to do it then.
That will give me time to do the evaluation document, and also I've got a covering letter I've partially drafted, so I can give you that as well to use.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to second the motion. I'd like to congratulate the group on the work. I think the proposals are exciting, things like having a gallery. I think this will be great in terms of the benefit to the town. Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay, so if we go to the recommendations,
Just before that, there's a very quick update from the town clerk on
Facebook.
Yeah.
Yes,
I didn't want to say it, but.
I was going to come back to that. but-
Oh, okay, apologies.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So I am in the process of trying to secure the total control of the Facebook page. I have been sending emails to a support link, but I haven't had a response to date. But I am still pursuing that, and that is my intention. I have had a conversation with Hibbits today as well, to try and progress this a bit quicker. But it is something I want to try and achieve. I mean, I want to do it this week. That's what I want to do. But whether or not that will be achievable remains to be seen.
Is there some way of complaining to Facebook?
They ignore you.
Yeah, I was going to say you can do that, but nothing will happen.
You're quite certain. I mean, we haven't tried.
So at the moment, Hibbits controls the Facebook page.
It's Hillas.
Yes.
Yeah. Or Hilas.
Highway
They're
learning
all-
and support.
they're
We're all
all
part of the family.
Same organisation.
Highway Learning and Support, which is a separate company. Yeah.
So the worst case scenario is we set up a new Facebook page
Yes.
and send them a cease and desist letter to stop using the logo.
Yes, certainly. What we would lose the opportunity to do unless the existing page is closed down, we wouldn't be able to just say Sandwich Town Council. We'd have to be a variation like official Sandwich Town Council page or something along those lines.
Sorry, could I, before we agree on these look at these recommendations, could we, you mentioned 2 years for minutes and so on, someone mentioned 2 years.
Oh, yes.
Does that mean anything older than 2 years wouldn't be available?
That's
That's a worry.
Correct.
no. So minutes you do have to keep indefinitely.
Okay.
So there will need to be a paper copy if they're not on the website. And obviously, with setting up a new website, the more history you're putting on there, the more the cost of
And the time,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment about the minutes on the website? Because I did, I looked at the minutes going back, I think, to 2021 on the website. And although it looks as though the full minutes are there, because you could click on a blue link and up they come, when you actually look at a large number of them, large chunks of those minutes are not there. Many points have been expunged or simply were never put there. And I wrote some rather scrappy notes, and I have them still, as to what is missing. And it may be the case that they are also missing in the hard copies. So I think you need to check that, and I'll let you have my scrappy notes.
Thank you.
They are very scrappy, but there are large chunks, as I say, that are missing. And I have another question before we, I mean, as I understand it, we're going to accept all these documents in one vote. So I just want to be certain that under Annex 1B, Sandwich Town Council IT support user requirements, that we're not voting to go on using these wretched iPads, because I think a number of us find them obstructive actually. I can't do a lot of work on them, on this one, and I get correspondence. I'm setting up an exhibition, and people write to me, and I have to reply at length, and it takes hours. I want, it just doesn't work.
So I'm assuming we're not voting on the IT support user requirements at this
We're
stage.
certainly not, and
That's a separate.
we're not voting on the hardware
That's a
solution.
work in
But
progress.
within the IT support, managed support, one of the things that we talked about within the working group was about the facility to be able to have our account, our email accounts, etc., our Office 365 agnostic to the device. So if you're able to have it on your own device that you're really comfortable with, you'll get the managed support service wrapped around that. And I believe it's what's already used in Westgate on Sea as their solution.
Yeah, I have used that sort of system in the past.
I mean, I spend a lot of time on my iMac, which is big, editing Word documents and
Yes.
sending it to my council
Exactly.
account,
Exactly,
sending it
that's
back.
what one has to do.
I mean, with the
We
bank,
all do that. We all do that.
with the bank, I go in and use the log in and the two-factor
Yes.
authentication. I don't see why we can't have the same facility and do whatever's best for us personally, rather than being stuck with these.
Particularly as the iPads are at end of life in any case, so we would have to be looking at a new hardware solution if that's where we want to go.
But that's a work in progress at the moment. We'll
And
come
we're
back.
not voting for it.
Yeah, so,
No,
So
it's
can-
just a recommendation.
yeah, can we go to the recommendations then, which are
So,
within the report, and I
yeah,
presume we can take these on block,
Yeah.
unless you want to take them one by one.
Yeah, I propose taking them on block, and I propose that we accept these recommendations as
So
quickly
we
as
have a proposal to accept them. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Green. All those in favour?
Thank you.
Anyone against? Abstaining? No. So that's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much for all the work on that. It's very encouraging. Because IT is one of those things which is, the public feel is very poor at the moment. So. Okay, the next item is financial risk assessment and management scheme update. Councillor Zucker to provide a verbal report on the progress of a review of risks that fall under the headings property insurance, security, finance and financial administration.
so this one will be very quick. I sat down with Jill earlier, was it earlier this week? It was last week,
Yes.
taking them through a first draft of the risk register that I've been working on. It's been updated, includes a redesign of the template and also a redesign of the scoring methodology. Jill was content with the work so far. We've agreed there are some areas still to be finished off, so I will be doing that over August. So the intention is for me to give a final draft across to the town clerk by the 11th of August, to give her time with her team to review and update it, to make sure it is correct, and that it means it can come to the September meeting of this committee.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is that noted?
Note the report.
Note. All those in favour?
Thank you.
Next item is priorities for the Finance and General Purposes Committee for 23-4. Members are to consider a report from Councillor Wiles for recommended actions for prioritising Finance and General Purposes Committee decision required. So this is attachment 3. This is something I drafted and had sent out to members of the committee for any comments. I had one comment asking to add something in. I mean, this is really a holding report. We all know the staffing situation is difficult at the moment. There's a meeting of the personnel subgroup later this week to talk about draft proposals that the town clerk has prepared for the new staff structure, and that will come to the council in due course. But this is really to say that this committee, which hadn't met very often since it was formed last year, really should be the kind of engine room of the internal workings of the council. It's where the detailed discussions take place and where we try and improve the overall administration and financial health of this council. So this is really just things that we've considered at previous meetings. The council a meeting ago agreed a 10-point plan, if you like, and this builds on that. So I think these are all, they're not new, I don't think, for most members. They're all things which are in hand, which we see as a priority.
Sorry, could I just put a caveat on the, I was the previous chair of the Finance General Purposes Committee, but this was before, of course, before we had Jill, and so I was very reliant. Everything was done by the responsible financial officer, and so every time we tried to plan out a meeting, the responsible financial officer was covering the town clerk role and the responsible financial officer role. So the staffing was a dire position. So it's very difficult to organise very many meetings. But just wanted to put that caveat out there, because we didn't have even the staffing that we've got now. So it was reduced down to one person doing the whole thing. Thank you.
And I think the other thing to add to that is that once the new structure goes forward, then the town clerk will be tied up with recruiting and advertising and all the employment issues involved in that. So, you know, until we've got bodies in place, it's going to be a very difficult period for us.
Yes, I don't see here where we as councillors consider the use of space within this building. And you know, there have been arguments, like for example, where the tourist information centre or should be located, whether there should be a permanent temporary exhibition space, those kinds of questions. And I'm not sure whether this is the committee that should consider that. And I think, but I do think it is an issue that needs consideration. And it is relevant to the activities of this committee because it does connect or complement any discussion there is about hiring of rooms within this building and the fees that should be charged and so on.
Oh yeah, you are correct. This would be the committee that it would come to, but this is a matter that the matter that you're raising is to do with will be relevant to the staff restructure. So there would be a key member of staff that would be assisting and undertaking exactly what you've just said. But obviously I don't want to divulge too much information before it's been considered and
yes.
to do with the rooms.
Well, the use of
the
space
rooms, space,
within this building and its most efficient.
Yeah, that's going to be undertaken by.
It's like that, we've got to get the hub back, haven't we? That's a waste of space there, isn't it?
But before we've got a certain key member of staff in place, if we start discussing it, we'd have to rediscuss it.
I'm not saying we should discuss it now.
No.
What this document produced by Councillor Wiles simply lists the priorities for this committee, and I would like another one added. That is a review of space, the use of space within the Guildhall.
Oh, I see.
As I said, I did send this out to all members of the committee asking for
I'm sorry,
comments on it. But I think it's a fair point. I mean, clearly, this committee is responsible for looking after all the assets of the town council, including this building. But there will inevitably be some overlap with heritage and townscape.
Well, I'm not
example,
saying I'm not claiming that issue for heritage and townscape, not at all. I'm just saying we need to look at, as well as staff restructuring, we need to look at space restructuring.
Well, one of the priorities here is to review the Guildhall Futures Plan, which is all about this building
Yes.
and how it's laid out. And you know, I agree, it's a very poor building to manage and
Yes.
to use, and it's not friendly to
But
people or customers.
I don't think it should be a sort of sub-clause of the review of the Guildhall. I think it should be a separate
Yeah.
priority.
Okay, well, we can add that in if you're happy with that.
From my point of view, I think I sent you a list of 14 items
You did.
that I believe that this committee should be
Yeah.
addressing. Importantly, the first one was health and safety.
Yeah.
And I did suggest that out of those 14 items, they could be rotated so we didn't have to discuss 14 items all of the time. But I can't believe that all of these are urgent priorities. You know, we need to apply a more manageable priority ranking because, for me, things like health and safety are really important. Another one that I put on the list was, that I sent to Councillor Wiles, was about funding applications.
Yeah.
Because I think we as a town should be seeking funding from whatever government sources are around. I think, you know, we did kind of look at the kind of the toll bridge fund management. I think that is a priority because, as I see it at the moment, we're getting £44,000 a year in dividends from the toll bridge fund, and we're spending over £100,000. So we're spending a lot more. We're eating into our capital there. So there are other things that I think, you know, need to be included, and whether they are on the list, whatever priorities assigned, whether it's an urgent priority or a bi-monthly priority or whatever. But I think all of the items should be on the list.
Did you see my reply today to your email?
I can't say it.
Okay. So I replied saying, yeah, thank you, it's really important this. I discussed it with the town clerk and the financial officer last week, and we agreed that we will have to bring a report with some of those items to each meeting, certainly health and safety and other key issues. Some of them are things that are included in the 5J, which we look at every year. I mean, some of the things, the Tollbridge Fund, whenever we say this committee needs to do something about the Tollbridge Fund, we have our wrists slapped and told that it's nothing to do with us. But certainly the Tollbridge Fund, redoing the grant criteria is an urgent priority. It's something we need to look at. And the capital issue I discussed with the financial officer last week, that it's not sustainable that we're basically eating into the capital of the Tollbridge Fund long term. So that's why the Guildhall Futures Plan is a key priority for this committee, and the relationship with the Tollbridge Fund. But yeah, I have replied anyway.
Martin first.
Thank you. Yes, I think that there is a certain sort of sense of sequence in the priorities, and I would argue that alongside the website and the restructuring plan, we should consider equipping the RFO with the tools to do the job properly. Is a necessary starting point. And so I think providing the necessary software for the RFO to be able to produce a lot of the information which will be needed, for instance, for looking at the links with the Tollbridge Fund is really important and quite urgent. I don't know, does this need to come back to us, or is this something which staff can be done? It depends on the cost of the software. I'm not sure what would be involved.
Well, I think this list, if you're happy with it, should be turned into a kind of rolling action plan that we come back to at each meeting just to see what progress is being made against each item. I don't know if you want to rank these in order of priority, but this would be my recommendation.
Support that completely, but I would suggest in terms of governance it might be better to expand it. So what I think we need to, the one thing that isn't on here at the moment, which I'll talk about very quickly, but it isn't something we can do today because we haven't got the resources. But I've mentioned before, we should have a deep dive around the finances. We should build that in as our ways of working, that we take an opportunity, maybe twice a year, where we actually dive into, because some of these issues are things that we need to understand more deeply than just skimming over them. Because we end up in this situation where STBF is a good example. But what I want to say around governance, what would be really good, I think, is having it's a work programme, it's a pipeline of the work we've got, so everything's visible. It's not about telling people to hide stuff away. I think we get things on there, we prioritise them, we have owners, and then we just have that as a worksheet, because if not, what will happen, Colin, is that each meeting people will come along and say, what's happening about X? If it's on our pipeline, then you've got it visible, and you'll say the priority for it is this. If the priority for an item increases, then it has to be at the cost of something else decreasing. That's how we should be managing it in a governance perspective. We can't do everything at once, it's already been said, but we can do a small number of things quick, a small number of things medium, and so on. And we should be able to move that pipeline in a way that reflects what is important to us.
Yeah. I was just going to say very briefly, I totally agree with Councillor Tuker on that, the pipeline, and particularly the priorities, which has cropped up several times tonight. But we should also, all pipelines are relative to what it says at the top of this document, and that's the actual date, the timeline date. So this is the priorities for the financial year 23-24. So once we've prioritised, we can have 14 or even more items that we want. Once we've prioritised those, and I suggest we prioritise things a bit like Councillor Pennington was saying, you know, if we default or make some financial mistake, then we could be investigated and due to pay severe penalties. So for instance, the priorities of all these items should be checked against, as you say, governance, so that we do the correct ones first. So there's quite a lot of items that maybe we would like to do, a wish list, and as is said, they should be prioritised, they've got a lower score, and they're perhaps pushed into the next financial year, which will be 24-25. But can we all realise that we've only got 8 months left in this current financial year and not overextend ourselves?
I mean, there are 2 or 3 items in here, for example, explore the relationship between STC and TBF, which realistically we might not get around to until into the new year at least.
I think the thing is, managing a pipeline, you have to look at the resources available. So if we make too many priority items, we will just drown. We need to know what the resource available to match it against a pipeline, and as mentioned, defer things that, and if you have to be longer than is ideal, that's so be it, because resource is key to delivering any items on the pipeline. And we will be getting into setting the budgets for next year, not very far away. So it's important, I think, we have a deep dive in the early autumn to enable us to be equipped to understand what decisions we're making, and if not, we will just repeat what's happened previously.
And we also adding to that, things that are statutory have got to be addressed. So as far as I'm concerned, if we're making statutory declarations at the end of the year, as we did at the last month, we need to have satisfied ourselves at appropriate intervals throughout the year, and not just waiting until a load of accounts arrive at the end of June. We've got to action now, and those are the things which are urgent.
I think that's what happened after the last election, because we had 4 years with, I think it went up 19% into the police at that first year. There was in such a state of town council finances. In 2019, I think the police said over 19%. And then we said we'd do it over a 4-year period and work it out. So it's not just 22, 23, 24, but you've got to work out to make it, so you don't get a big hit, but it's evened out over the period.
So can I recommend that these priorities are agreed in principle at this meeting, and that I work on them in greater detail with the town clerk and the RFO for the September meeting? Maybe put rankings against them, owners, and also add in some of the items that Councillor Green has raised, with realistic timescales for their Yeah, some of them are in hand already, but some might be
Yeah.
slipping into 4 or 5.
I'll second that, if that's the proposal.
Just so long as my comment about space restructuring.
It's been minutes ago, I believe. Okay, seconder for that?
I'll second your
Oh,
proposal.
okay. All those in favour? So that's easy. Okay, thank you very much. Onwards and upwards. Item 8, confidential matters under the Public Bodies Admissions Meetings Act 1960, extended by Section 100 of the Local Government Act 1972. The public may be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 by virtue of the paragraph specified against the item. Item 1, information relating to a particular employee, former employee or applicant to become an employee or a particular office holder under the authority. Decision required. So we have to vote on whether we now exclude the public.
I recommend we exclude the public at this point.
We have a seconder.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All those in favour? Thank you.